My name is James Gold, and this is the bizarre story of my marriage. I graduated from one of the top law schools in the United States. After landing a job at a prestigious law firm, I quickly rose to the ranks of junior partner, and before long, I became a full partner in record time. Everyone could see I was destined for success. One project I worked on was particularly difficult, but within a week I took charge of it. Other attorneys and legal assistants started following my lead. Among them was Karen Williams, the most stunning woman I had ever laid eyes on. With her natural blonde hair, deep blue eyes, and a smile that could melt icebergs, she was breathtaking. She also had the body of a model, with curves I estimated to be around 38G 24 to 35. And I wasn't far off. We were both 26 when we met. I didn't have to make a move because Karen was already pursuing me. Yes, I'm tall and good-looking, but she saw in me a man on the path to greatness, and she wanted to be part of it. All I did was follow her lead. By the end of my first week, Karen walked up to me and said, "It's been a crazy week. How about you buy me a drink?" I agreed. I knew I was being pursued, but I was curious where it would go. After 2 drinks, we ended up at her place where she gave me the most amazing B I'd ever received. It wasn't easy for her, considering I'm about 8 inches fully erect, but she handled it like a pro, swallowing every last drop. I offered to return the favor, but she suggested we save that for next time. I kissed her goodnight and told her I'd see her Monday. Monday came, and it was a busy day. A gorgeous attorney named Anne worked closely with me for most of the day on a part of the case we were handling. It was clear Anne was interested in me. If I could see it, Karen definitely noticed it too, but she couldn't do much about it. Later that evening, I had a 6 p.m. meeting with a senior partner to update him on the case. Right before the meeting, I told the team that we were done for the day and would pick things back up on Tuesday. After spending an hour in the meeting, I returned to my office only to find both Karen and Anne waiting for me. When you're an attorney and unsure of how to navigate a situation, the best move is often to do nothing. I walked into my office, sat down at my desk, and looked at the 2 women who had followed me inside. No one said a word. Finally, I broke the silence, saying, "All right, I'm hungry. Do either of you or both of you want to grab a drink with me downstairs?" So my treat. Karen agreed immediately, but Anne declined and left. That was how things worked with Karen. She had the looks and the body to win any contest. After dinner, she reminded me of my offer from Friday, so we went back to her place. She excused herself for a moment, then called me into the bedroom where she lay on the bed, completely naked. Karen smiled and said, "Why don't you strip down and have me for dessert?" That's exactly what I did, and she tasted incredible. I devoured her until she came twice, each climax more intense than the last. Afterward, Karen said, "Wow, I didn't expect you to be this good. Since you're already naked, let's see how good you are in bed." The great thing about having a big package is that it's easier to satisfy a woman. You reach places others can't. As long as you put in some effort, you can leave a woman completely satisfied. We started in missionary, and let me tell you, having sex with Karen was enough to make any man lose control. Hearing her scream in pleasure only pushed me further. As I began to climax, so did she, and the sensation sent me over the edge. It was the most intense orgasm I'd ever experienced. When I finished, I collapsed on top of her, exhausted. I planned to stay with her that night, but I needed to get home in the morning to shower, shave, and dress for work. Karen had a different idea. She suggested she could bring a few things to my place so we could spend the night together more often. While I knew this was part of her strategy to lock me down, I didn't mind. I was eager to know what it would be like to actually sleep with her. And we did that night. The next morning, she woke me with another mind-blowing bee. By the end of the second week, we were living together. 6 months later, before I gave her the engagement ring, I presented her with a prenuptial agreement. She knew it was coming. I had made it a condition of partnership at the firm, and I had even proposed to the other partners that the firm needed to be protected from the kind of fallout that can come with marriage. As part of that protection, there were specific clauses in the prenup. If either of us was caught cheating, we'd leave with nothing. She could still cheat, but if caught, she'd lose everything. Of course, she signed. She probably thought she had married a rich, successful man who knew how to handle himself in bed. She wouldn't have to sneak around with the pool boy or tennis instructor. To her, this was a win. She even said she wanted 2 or 3 kids, and I liked the idea. It was nice to think that she loved me, but honestly, I didn't think she did. She certainly liked me. The sex was fantastic, and I enjoyed being with her. She never asked for anything crazy. She'd suggest vacations that I found appealing, and I cared for her deeply. I hoped she felt the same way about me. 3 months later, we were married and we honeymooned in Paris, where our first child, Harry, was conceived. I told Karen that if she wanted to retire and stay home to raise our kids, I was fine with that. We continued to have sex during her pregnancy, which was a good sign for me. She clearly enjoyed being with me physically. She even suggested we name our son James Jr., but I wasn't a fan. I felt that a child should have their own identity, separate from their parents. So we settled on Harry Gold. Karen's father wasn't in the picture. Her mother, Ellen, had raised her alone after becoming pregnant in high school. Ellen moved in with us when Harry was born, and I suggested she stay in our new 5-bedroom house in the suburbs. Ellen was happy with the arrangement, and Karen loved having her mother around. We didn't waste any time in our bedroom, and soon after our daughter, Annabelle, was born. Karen remained affectionate and sexually interested. As soon as her doctor gave her the green light after Annabelle's birth, she told her mom, "Mom, can you watch the kids for a bit? I really need Jimmy to fuck me. It's been weeks, and I need that big dick of his." Her mom blushed a deep red. So as soon as we got into the bedroom, I apologized to Ellen, trying to be polite and make her feel better. She responded, "She talks about you almost every day, and she's very detailed." Now it was my turn to blush, but it didn't stop me from satisfying Karen. Her breasts were larger from pregnancy and nursing, and they drove me wild. We made love frequently, and within a month, Karen was pregnant again. I began to wonder if we'd end up with a dozen kids, but after Jeremy was born, Karen decided she was done and had her tubes tied. I was fine with it. Our sex life stayed hot, and Karen worked hard to get back in shape. We felt like newlyweds. I had the perfect life. I had a beautiful, sexy wife, and we had an amazing sex life. Our 3 kids were wonderful, and Karen and I adored them. Ellen became like a second mom to me, and I even started calling her mom. The kids adored their grandma, and she never clashed with Karen. Work was going great too. I was a full partner, and I was on track to become wealthy beyond my dreams. Karen had a circle of friends in the neighborhood who I liked. All the wives were married to successful men, and none of them were oddballs. So we socialized with them, and all the husbands were family men who loved their wives. So none of us ever talked about cheating or other women. I was truly happy. For the next 15 years, everything was perfect. Our kids grew up, and I became a senior partner. Karen remained sexually active with me every day. She adored my big dick. The only thing that bothered me was that Karen never said she loved me. Whenever I'd say "I love you," she'd kiss me and change the subject. It bugged me, but I learned to live with it. The only problem in my life was Jackson, one of our clients. He had inherited his father's company and fortune, making him a billionaire. I found him arrogant, but he never asked me to do anything illegal, and his business brought the firm a lot of money, so I put up with him. After I saved him about $90 million in a tough business negotiation, Jackson became fixated on getting revenge on Murphy, the head of the other company. Murphy had a beautiful wife, Sally, who had dyed blonde hair and massive fake breasts. Jackson decided to seduce her as a form of revenge. Murphy wasn't a billionaire, but Jackson was, and Sally fell for his wealth and charm. A day after Jackson had sex with Sally Murphy, he sent photos of them together to her husband, Murphy. When Murphy got the photos, he was devastated. He called me, and I told him I had no idea about his wife or the pictures. The man was so upset that I offered to take him out to lunch. He brought the printed photos with him to the lunch, and I felt terrible for him. I apologized, even though I hadn't done anything wrong, because I thought what my client Jackson had done was completely unnecessary. Of course, Murphy filed for divorce immediately. Sally didn't fight it, thinking she had upgraded financially. Sexually, she'd traded her 5-inch ex-husband for a billionaire with more to offer. After meeting with Murphy, I called Jackson to let him know how distraught Murphy was, hoping to appeal to some sense of humanity in him. Clearly, Jackson had no such sense. He told me he was thrilled and instructed me to bill him for the time I spent with Murphy and the cost of our lunch. I did as he asked. The week Sally Murphy's divorce was finalized, Jackson called me to handle a prenuptial agreement for his upcoming marriage. I passed the matter to our family law department. Murphy called me again to tell me about an odd invitation. Jackson had invited him to Sally's farewell bachelorette party. I told Murphy that such parties were usually for the bride, not the groom, but Murphy explained it was different. Jackson had invited 25 men to engage in a gangbang with Sally. He said that after they were done, they were all going to piss in her mouth. I was stunned. I told Murphy I wouldn't be attending and advised him to cancel the event. Murphy didn't listen. A few days later, another one of my clients who had received an invite to Jackson's party called me. He told me that Jackson had sent him nude pictures of Sally Murphy and that he planned on going. Because he was a client, I gave him the usual warnings about sexually transmitted diseases, STDs, and suggested he reconsider. So he didn't take my advice. That Friday night, 25 men gangbanged Sally Murphy, and, as planned, finished by urinating in her mouth. The next day, Jackson sent Murphy a video of the entire event. Murphy forwarded me a copy. On Saturday, Jackson dumped Sally on the street with just a few suitcases, no cash, and no jewelry. Since they had never married, Sally had no legal claim to anything. The jewelry Jackson had given her was either rented or returned. She had nothing. Jackson, apparently enjoying this perverse sport, soon moved on to his next victims, the vice president of a bank and his wife, Alice Brown. The bank had recently denied Jackson a loan because they deemed it too risky, a decision I agreed with. Jackson's new target, Jack Brown, had recently left his wife for a much younger woman, Alice, who had enormous fake breasts and long black hair. Jack Brown had a net worth of about $10 million, while Jackson, still a billionaire, had multiple homes, a private jet, and a staff of servants. After Jackson slept with Alice, he sent Jack Brown the usual photos showing them together. I got a call from Brown, who was even more devastated than Murphy. I asked if he planned on divorcing Alice, and he confirmed that he would. He already had a prenuptial agreement in place, so Alice wouldn't get much. I told him about Sally Murphy's fate, which seemed to make Brown feel better. Sure enough, a few months later, Jackson called me again, this time inviting me to Alice Brown's gangbang. I politely declined. Another one of my clients who had received the invite was especially eager to attend because Alice, being in her early 20s, had larger breasts than Sally. He mentioned that this event would feature 30 to 35 men, a bigger crowd than usual. Again, I gave him my standard warning about STDs, and we ended the call. That Friday, 35 men gangbanged Alice Brown, filling every orifice multiple times. When they were finished, someone put a dental gag in her mouth, and they all took turns urinating into it. The next day, a video of the event was sent to Jack Brown, and Alice was dumped with 3 suitcases. She had nothing left. Jackson then turned his attention to another project and sought legal advice from my firm. His new venture would result in a lawsuit that he was almost certain to lose, so I recommended changes to make the deal legal. Jackson flew into a rage. He told me that either we approved the deal as it was, or he'd take his business elsewhere. I met with the managing partner, and we held an emergency executive committee meeting. Everyone loathed Jackson, and we agreed that we'd rather lose his business than jeopardize the firm's reputation and future on his shady deal. I was tasked with breaking the bad news to him. At this point, I started to wonder if Jackson would try to make my wife, Karen, and me his next victims. I called him and delivered our firm's decision. He quickly found another law firm that was willing to approve the deal, which I thought was incredibly stupid of them. Now, I had to tell Karen. Our youngest son, Jeremy, was about to graduate from high school and would be joining his siblings at my alma mater. They had just finished their first year of college. I waited until after dinner to talk to Karen. I asked her to come to my home office, and I closed the door. I first told her the story of Sally Murphy's downfall, which shocked her. Then, I told her about Alice Brown. When I described the dental gag used during the gangbang, Karen almost vomited. She asked why I was telling her these stories, and I told her I suspected Jackson would try to do the same thing to us. Karen's face went pale. She sat down and said, "My head is spinning. I need to lie down. The only thing that can help is if you fuck me with that big stick of yours." She wanted me to come 3 times, filling her mouth and every hole with my seed. So I fucked Karen's brains out that night, giving her exactly what she asked for. It actually made me feel better, knowing that in bed I was clearly superior to Jackson. Sure, Jackson had money, but when it came to sex, I was the clear winner. The next day, I was still worried. We were attending a charity event that Friday, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Jackson might try to pursue Karen there. So when I saw her in her black and silver gown, myself turned to steel. I started to worry even more. Would Jackson be at the event? Would my wife flaunt herself to this billionaire? As we were leaving the house, both of my sons whistled at their mother, and Annabelle, my daughter, made a comment that broke my heart. Mom, who are you trying to impress? In the car, I reminded Karen of the stories I'd told her about Sally Murphy and Alice Brown. She laughed and said, I saw how hard you got when you saw me in this dress. I'll be looking for 3 loads when we get home tonight. I relaxed, but only slightly. When we arrived at the event, Jackson was standing near the entrance. I tried to avoid him, but he came straight over to us, saying, Jim, good to see you. No hard feelings about switching firms, right? And who's this gorgeous woman with you? I didn't plan to answer, but Karen spoke up. I'm his wife, Karen Gold. Jackson continued his smooth talk. Oh, that can't be right. You're worth much more than gold. I cut the conversation short and pulled Karen away. She was furious that I had dragged her off, and as we walked, we heard Jackson call out, Save me a dance, Karen. Karen was about to yell at me when I said, Karen, he's pursuing you. If you go with him, you'll end up gangbanged and pissed on. Are you really going to throw away your family for that? She was livid and stormed off to the bar, where Jackson followed her. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Karen was smiling and touching his arm. I felt certain I was losing her. What was I going to tell our kids? I watched as Jackson whispered in her ear and put his hands on her ass. I decided to intervene. I walked over and asked, Having fun, darling? Karen replied, Oliver Jackson's first name was just telling me some interesting stories. I responded, Lucky you. All he's ever told me are disgusting, depraved ones. Karen glared at me. Why don't you go get yourself a drink? Oliver and I are going to dance. I followed them to the dance floor and watched Jackson put both of his hands on my wife's ass. I wanted to stop her, but Karen rubbed her leg against his crotch and whispered something in his ear. I only caught 2 words. Fuck me. That's when I tapped Jackson on the shoulder and said, You don't mind if I take one last dance with my soon-to-be ex-wife, do you? I started dancing with Karen and she smirked. Oh, you're divorcing me over a dance? I responded, No, Karen. I'll divorce you tomorrow when he sends me the pictures of you 2 fucking tonight. Then, I'll file the paperwork on Monday when the courthouse opens. Karen, I don't know what lies he's been feeding you, but if you go with him tonight, you'll have a few months of fun, and then he'll arrange a gangbang for you, just like Sally and Alice. In the end, he'll humiliate you when all those men piss in your mouth. It's not too late. Come home with me now, and I'll forget this ever happened. Karen's eyes flashed with anger, but she kept her cool. Oh, you'll forget this? He told me about Sally and Alice? He said those stories were made up. You're just trying to keep me from being rich. I felt his stick when we were dancing, and he's bigger than you, Jim. So, maybe I'll see you every now and then, and we can still have sex. I was floored. Karen, you've lost your mind. If you go with him tonight, our marriage is over. I'm leaving right now. Are you coming with me, or are you throwing your life away for him? Karen didn't answer. She turned and grabbed Jackson's arm, pulling him in for a deep kiss right in front of everyone. So I walked out. I got home around 10 p.m. Everyone was still in the living room watching TV. Annabelle noticed me first. Where's Mom? I took a deep breath. Turn off the TV. We need to talk. The kids all started asking at once, Is Mom okay? What's going on? I responded, Physically, she's fine, but please just let me explain. Once the room quieted down, I said, Your mother decided to leave me tonight. She's running off with a billionaire. Annabelle exploded. What the hell are you talking about? Where is she? I'm calling her right now. I tried to stop her, but she had already dialed Karen. The call connected. Mom, where are you? Dad says you're leaving him. What? What? Are you insane? And Annabelle's voice escalated with each response. Don't tell me to watch my language, you stupid whore. So I'm not living with you. Go fuck yourself. I won't live with some dumb slut who abandoned her family for money. You're a fucking whore. Yeah, a whore. Fuck you. Annabelle hung up and burst into tears. I sat down beside her and pulled her into my arms. Harry, who had always been protective of Annabelle, joined us, wrapping his arms around her too. Ellen, my mother-in-law, came over and cradled Annabelle's head. I looked up at Jeremy, our youngest, and said, Sorry, Jeremy, no more room at the inn. He nodded and came over to join the group hug. I'll tell you everything, I began. Your mom has decided to run off with Jackson, the billionaire. So he's made a habit of seducing married women and then publicly humiliating them. I proceeded to tell my children the entire story about Jackson's exploits with Sally Murphy and Alice Brown. Annabelle physically recoiled when I got to the part about Sally being urinated on, and she nearly vomited. "You have to tell Mom," she insisted. "She has to know what's coming." "I already told her," I replied, but she chose not to believe me. "So, she's really gone?" Annabelle asked, her voice trembling. "It looks that way," I said. "If Jackson follows his usual pattern, he'll send me the photos of him with your mom by tomorrow. I can check my email from home, and if you want, you can see them." I turned to Ellen and apologized. "I'm sorry, Mom. I really tried." Annabelle, still processing everything, asked, "What happens now, Dad?" I explained, "Well, it's summer break, so we have a few months to adjust. I can take some time off work if you need me around, but things will pretty much be the same. I'll be here every day, and so will Grandma." Ellen interrupted, "You're not kicking me out, are you?" "Of course not," I reassured her. "You're a vital part of this family. When I asked Karen if she wanted you to live with us, that was a lifelong commitment on my part. I honor my commitments. Besides, I've already lost my wife. I don't want to lose anyone else." I started to cry, and the kids and Ellen hugged me tightly as I sobbed. Once I calmed down, I asked, "Any more questions?" Annabelle, still grappling with the situation, asked, "So, Mom's really getting divorced?" "If I get the photos tomorrow, then yes, I'll file for divorce. If not, I'll still probably go through with it," I replied. "So what if she comes home tomorrow and begs for your forgiveness?" Annabelle asked. I pondered that for a moment before responding. "Let's take a vote. If she comes back, who wants me to forgive her?" Not one hand went up. Annabelle, now crying again, hugged me tightly and whispered, "You always put the family first, Dad. I love you." "I wish your mom would have said that to me," I said quietly. Annabelle pulled back, shocked. "What? She never said she loved you." "Not once," I confessed. "Not in all the years we were together. I told her I loved her many times, but she never said it back." Tears welled up in Annabelle's eyes again as she hugged me even tighter. I continued, "Your mom married me because everyone at the firm could see I was on the fast track to success. She liked the sex, but if it had been bad, she still would have married me for the lifestyle. I hoped that maybe she just couldn't express her feelings, but now I realize she never loved me, just the life I could provide her." I sighed and added, "Well, it's been a tough day. I'm going to bed." Annabelle looked concerned. "Are you going to be able to sleep, Dad?" I gave her a small smile. "For nearly 20 years, your mom and I never went to bed without each other. So sleep, but it won't be easy. Tomorrow's going to be awful, and I don't know how I'd get through it without you cleaned up." We all hugged goodnight, and I went to bed. I set my alarm for 8 a.m. and somehow managed to get about 2 hours of sleep. The next morning, I called Bill, the managing partner at the law firm, and broke the news. "You dodged a bullet, Bill." He sounded confused. "What do you mean?" "Jackson seduced my wife last night," I said, "and I'm just waiting for the incriminating photos. I'll probably file for divorce on Monday, but I wanted to let you know I'll be taking at least a week off." Bill was very sympathetic, saying how sorry he was and told me to take as much time as I needed. After that, I went to my home office and logged into my work email. Sure enough, there was a message from Jackson with several junk attachments. I opened them, and there they were photos of Karen with Jackson. She was going down on him in one, they were in missionary position in another, and a third showed Jackson having sex with her doggy style while groping her breasts. The final picture was Jackson finishing on her face. I printed them out and returned to the living room. "Does anyone want to see these?" I asked, holding the photos face down. Annabelle nodded. "We talked about it. We all do." I hesitated, then laid the 6 pictures out on the table. Annabelle was the first to speak, her voice dripping with disgust. "What the hell? So you got a tiny dick? Mom said you had a huge one. She left you for this. What's wrong with her?" The boys laughed, and Ellen just shook her head in disbelief. Ellen turned to me and said, "She used to tell me every day how amazing the sex with you was. Sometimes she'd go into such detail that I'd have to go to my room to take care of myself. I'm so sorry, Jimmy. I feel like this is all my fault." "Mom, this isn't your fault," I said, reaching for her hand. "No, Jimmy," Ellen said softly. "I was raped in high school. I never told Karen about it. After that, I never dated again. I avoided men. I should have talked to her about it, but I didn't, and maybe she picked up on it." I gently shook my head. "This has nothing to do with that. Karen watched you live with me for nearly 2 decades, and she saw how well we worked together. She had a good life here. This is all her decision. Maybe Jackson will marry her, and she'll beat the odds." Annabelle suddenly asked, "Dad, would you ever take her back if he dumps her?" I didn't hesitate. No, this proves she never had any real feelings for me. What would stop her from running off with another rich guy, even if she did come back? She's broken my heart. I'll file for divorce on Monday, and that'll be the end of it. Now, I need a shower. Then, let's go out for breakfast." Annabelle's phone buzzed while we were getting ready, and she looked at the screen, surprised. "It's Mom. What should I do?" "Say answer it," I suggested. "Say hello." Annabelle took a deep breath and answered, "Hello, Mom. What do you want?" She paused, listening, then her tone became incredulous. "What? Jackson told you he didn't mean to send those photos to Dad? Are you seriously this stupid?" Annabelle's face flushed with anger, and she snapped, "I can't believe how dumb you are." I interrupted her and said, "Honey, don't let her get to you. She's going to say all kinds of crazy things to justify her actions." Annabelle turned back to the phone, trying to calm herself. "Yeah, Dad's talking me down. At least he cares about us. You sold us all out for a guy and money you'll never actually have." "Oh, what? Are you out of your mind?" "No, I'm not going to say that to him." Annabelle rolled her eyes and then said, "Hold on, let me think." She put the phone down and looked at me. "Dad, she says she wants to come over on Monday to apologize and, have sex with you." Annabelle's expression was a mixture of disbelief and disgust. I shook my head. "Let me talk to her." Annabelle handed me the phone. "Karen," I began, "listen carefully because I'm only going to say this once. As long as the kids want to see you, you'll never be banned from visiting. I was thinking of changing the locks, but since you left your keys here, that's not necessary. If you want to collect your things, you can come by on Monday. I won't be here in the morning because I'll be filing for divorce. When I return, if you're still around, I'll hand you the papers in person. You see, Karen, I'm actually helping you. You can't marry Jackson if you're still married to me, so I'm doing you a favor." Karen tried to cut in, but I continued, "And about half of everything I own." "No, you're not entitled to that, Karen. You signed a prenup, remember? The second you slept with Jackson, you forfeited your rights to any of our shared assets." She stammered, trying to defend herself, but I wasn't done. "As for having sex with me, that ship has sailed. You'll never touch me again. Get used to Jackson's tiny or find someone else on the side. Whatever you do, I don't care anymore. That's your problem, not mine. And the kids. They're all adults now. They can live wherever they choose. So if you can convince Jackson to let them stay with you, go ahead and ask them." Karen tried another approach. "What about my mother?" I responded, "Ellen is a part of this family. I made a lifetime commitment to her, and that hasn't changed. I honor my promises, unlike you. If you want to ask her to live with you in Jackson, you're free to do so. I doubt she'll agree." I could hear Karen starting to panic. "But what about the house?" I answered coldly, "You're living in Jackson's mansion, aren't you? This is the Gold family home. Bye, Karen. Maybe I'll see you on Monday." With that, I handed the phone back to Annabelle. Annabelle spoke into the phone, her voice icy. "All right, I'm sure you loved that response, didn't you? By the way, don't bother trying to convince us to live with you. None of us want to." "Yeah, I'll let you hear it from the boys. Hold on, I'm putting you on speaker. Yes or no, does anyone want to live with this idiot?" She paused and then with a smirk said, "Well, Mom, they all said no. But here's the deal, if you can somehow convince Jackson to let us live with him, tell him to call us. Maybe we'll reconsider, but don't hold your breath. Bye, loser." Annabelle hung up. We all sat there for a moment, processing the conversation. Eventually I said, "Well, that was enlightening." We tried to make the rest of the weekend as normal as possible, but there was a heavy feeling hanging over the house. When Monday morning came, I got ready to head out and file the divorce papers. The kids asked me what they should do if Karen showed up before I returned. "If she does," I told them, "just tell her to wait until I get back. If you're uncomfortable, you can always ask her to call ahead." I took care of everything at the lawyer's office. Our firm's family law team had the divorce papers ready for me, and I asked them to send all the bills directly to me. So they assured me it wouldn't cost me anything. Bill had already told them the firm would cover any expenses. I thanked them and left with the divorce papers in hand. When I got home, it was around 11:15 a.m. Karen was sitting in Jackson's limo at the end of the driveway. She stepped out as I pulled up, walking toward me with open arms, ready to hug me. I held up my hand, stopping her in her tracks. "Let me go inside and tell the kids I'm back. I'll be right out." I went inside and asked if any of them wanted to be the one to hand Karen the divorce papers. Ellen volunteered. I instructed her just give her this envelope and say, "Karen Gold, you've been served. Then I'll take a picture of you handing it to her." So Ellen nodded and followed me outside. Karen stood by the door, looking hopeful, but the kids were nowhere to be seen. Ellen approached her, handed her the envelope, and said exactly what I told her to. Karen took the papers, her face falling as I snapped the picture. So then, in a shocking moment, Ellen slapped Karen across the face and said, "I am ashamed to be your mother." Karen was stunned into silence. The kids remained as far from her as possible, clearly avoiding any contact. Karen looked at me, eyes wide. "Okay, let's go lie down for a bit, shall we?" I stared at her, barely able to believe what she had just said. "There's a suitcase of your clothes on the bed inside. Take your things and get out of my sight." I followed Karen inside, making sure she only packed her belongings. As she searched for her jewelry, I informed her, "I've decided to let Annabelle and Ellen keep whatever pieces they like. I'll send you anything they don't want." Karen protested, "That's my jewelry." "Not anymore," I replied. "You forfeited it when you slept with Jackson. If you need money, you can always sell your engagement ring. I noticed you aren't wearing it." Karen's face hardened. "I don't need money. Jackson's rich." "Then have him replace whatever you like," I said. "But let's not pretend there's any sentimental value attached to those things. You've never cared about anything of mine." She started to get angry now. "How can you say that?" I answered simply, "Because in nearly 20 years, Karen, you've never once told me you loved me." Karen looked down, ashamed, and silently finished packing. She quickly gathered her things, and I carried the suitcase to the front door. I turned to her one last time and said, "I'm not throwing you out. If you want to talk to the kids, you can spend as much time with them as you like." So the kids all turned their backs to her. Tears welled up in Karen's eyes. I couldn't help myself. "Now you know what a broken heart feels like." She called for Jackson's driver to collect her things, and she left without another word. As soon as she was gone, I looked around at my family and asked, "Who's up for a beer?" Everyone laughed, and we each cracked open a cold one. Even the boys wanted a second round, but I told them we'd wait until after lunch. After sandwiches, we all had another beer. As we sat there, I remembered the jewelry and brought out Karen's jewelry box for Ellen and Annabelle to go through. So each of them found pieces they liked. Harry looked up at me and asked, "Dad, I hope you don't mind me asking, but I'm curious. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but how much are you worth?" I thought for a moment. Between my partnership at the firm, the house, retirement funds, investments, and cash on hand, about $35 million. Maybe more. Harry smiled. "So you don't really have to work anymore." "No, I don't," I admitted, "but this year I'm set to make over $5 million. I'm the top candidate to become managing partner next year. Over the next 10 years, I could bring in another $75 million. And when each of you graduates, you'll be debt-free, and no matter what path you choose, you'll be set for success." With that, I left a 25% tip and took everyone home. I told the kids that I planned to take this week off, maybe more if necessary. Later that day, Annabelle's phone rang again. It was Karen. "What do I say?" she asked, looking to me for guidance. "Answer it and be civil," I advised. Annabelle picked up the phone. "Hi, Mom, what do you want?" She listened, then her face twisted in disbelief. "Jackson said he didn't send those pictures to Dad on purpose? Who the hell did he send them to, then?" "No, Mom, you're lying to yourself. He sent those photos to humiliate Dad and you. So what the hell is wrong with you?" Annabelle's voice was trembling with frustration. "No, I can't believe you're falling for this. He's manipulating you. And you're letting him." I could see Annabelle was on the verge of losing her temper again, so I reached over and gently touched her arm. She turned to me, nodded, and took a deep breath. "Mom, Dad told me to stay calm, so I'm trying, but you're making it really hard. Look, we've already seen the pictures. All of us. And we've talked it through. We know the truth." Annabelle listened for a moment, then clenched her fist. "Mom, are you seriously trying to blame Dad for this? So no, he didn't push you away. You threw everything away for Jackson. You abandoned us. This is on you." I could hear Karen's voice through the phone, pleading and defensive, trying to justify her choices. Annabelle shot back, "No, I don't care what lies Jackson is feeding you. He's done this before, with Sally Murphy and Alice Brown, and now he's doing it to you. You're nothing special to him. You're just another conquest." The room fell silent as Annabelle listened to Karen's tearful response. "Mom, listen to yourself," Annabelle said quietly. "Do you really believe Jackson cares about you? He's going to do the same thing to you that he did to those other women. And when he's done, he'll throw you out like garbage." Annabelle's voice wavered. "You need to wake up, Mom. You're going to get hurt. I'm trying to help you." Tears started to well up in her eyes again. "Just think about it, okay? We still love you, but you need to see what's really happening." After a long pause, Annabelle finally said, "Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye, Mom." She hung up and sat there quietly for a few moments, wiping her eyes. I sat beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did great, kiddo." Annabelle turned to me, her voice soft but full of emotion. "Dad, I don't know how to get through to her. It's like she's brainwashed." "I know," I said gently, "but you said what needed to be said. She'll have to figure the rest out on her own." The rest of the week passed by uneventfully, though there was an underlying tension in the house. We all knew the situation with Karen wasn't over, and I could tell the kids were struggling to process everything. They were angry, confused, and hurt, but they were also resilient. Then came Friday. That evening, we all gathered in the living room, dreading what was coming. I had received another message from Jackson, this time with a video attached. It was the footage of Karen's gangbang, just like what it had to Sally Murphy and Alice Brown. I didn't want to watch it, but I needed to know what had happened. As I scanned the video, it confirmed my worst fears. Karen had done everything Jackson had promised. After the men finished with her, they had all taken turns urinating on her. Jackson had filmed it all, grinning as if it were some kind of twisted trophy. When I looked up from the computer screen, I didn't say anything at first. Annabelle could tell something was wrong. "Dad, what happened?" I took a deep breath and looked at my kids. It's worse than we thought. There were 50 men, and they all pissed on her afterward. Annabelle's face went pale, and tears started streaming down her cheeks. She covered her mouth, trying to hold back sobs. Ellen, too, looked devastated. The boys were silent, Harry pacing the room in anger, his fists clenched. I stood up and walked over to Harry, wrapping my arms around him. "I'm sorry, son. I know this hurts." Harry's body tensed, and he finally broke down, crying into my shoulder. Annabelle and Jeremy joined us, and we all huddled together in the middle of the room, trying to console one another. After a while, I suggested, "Let's all have a drink. I think we need one." We poured ourselves small glasses of scotch and quietly toasted to getting through this together. It was a long, somber night and none of us really knew what to say. But we didn't need to. Just being together was enough. The next day, Saturday, we were all on edge, waiting for Karen to reach out. Around 11 a.m., Annabelle's phone rang. It was Karen. Annabelle looked at me, unsure. Should I put her on speaker? "Yeah," I replied. "We all need to hear this." Annabelle pressed the speaker button and said, "Hello, Mom? What do you want, Dom?" Karen's voice came through, shaky and defeated. "You were right. You were right about everything. I was so stupid." There was a heavy pause before Karen continued, her voice breaking. "I need help." I leaned in, my tone firm but not unkind. "Karen, we're here. Tell us where you are, and we'll come get you." She let out a sob. "I'm in front of the Hilton. Can you come with Ellen?" I don't want to face you alone." "Of course," I said, glancing at Ellen. "We'll be there soon." So we got in the car, Ellen and I sitting in silence for most of the ride. I held her hand, knowing this was as hard for her as it was for me. When we arrived at the Hilton, Karen was sitting on the curb, her suitcase beside her. She looked broken, a shadow of the confident woman I had once known. I parked, and we both got out. Ellen opened the back door for Karen, who stood up, clutching her suitcase. She didn't say anything at first, just got into the car, avoiding eye contact. Once we were driving, Karen finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you for coming to get me. I know you didn't have to." I kept my eyes on the road. "We're not leaving you stranded, Karen. But things have changed. The first stop is a clinic to get you tested for STDs." Karen protested weakly, "I don't have anything. Jackson, he wouldn't." I cut her off. "Oh, really? Did you get health certificates from the 50 men who had sex with you and pissed in your mouth? Because I'd like to see them." Karen was silent for a long moment before breaking down into sobs. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I glanced at Ellen in the rearview mirror. She didn't say a word, but the look in her eyes was one of pity mixed with disappointment. We arrived at the clinic and Karen got tested. The results would be mailed to my house, and we made arrangements for Karen to stay at a nearby motel until the results came in. The kids met us at the motel to see their mother, but they kept their distance as I had asked. Karen, looking defeated, said, "I hope you'll let me come back home. I know things are different now. I know Ellen and you are together." The kids brought her some food and supplies, and after a short, strained visit, we left her there. It wasn't an easy goodbye. Back at home, Harry was pacing again, his frustration bubbling over. "How the hell can that bastard get away with this?" he asked, his voice tight with anger. I sighed. What he did was immoral, but unfortunately nothing illegal. We can't prosecute him for it. "But you're going to make him pay, right, Dad?" Harry asked, his eyes burning with determination. I nodded. "I've already started working on it, but I can't give you details until next week. I promise I'll call everyone when I have news." So next morning, Sunday, the kids returned to school, but not before stopping by to say goodbye to Sai. I received the results from her STD test later that day. She had contracted syphilis, chlamydia, and gonorrhea. I immediately called my client, who had attended the gangbang, and informed him, urging him to get tested, along with anyone he'd been with since Friday. Karen was shocked when I showed her the report. She broke down and raged and humiliated. We took her to the doctor, who prescribed all the necessary medications I had to pay for since there was no health insurance for ex-wives. I had added Ellen to my health insurance plan back in September, as my domestic partner. By the following weekend, I filed a massive lawsuit against Jackson, his company, and the law firm that had signed off on the prenuptial agreement that started this mess with Karen. I was seeking damages amounting to $2 to $3 billion. It could take years to settle, but I had requested that the court seize all of Jackson's tangible assets in the meantime. The lawsuit immediately tanked Jackson's law firm. They were ruined, and I doubted any of their lawyers would ever work in the industry again. I called the kids that Friday to give them the good news. They weren't surprised about Karen's STDs, but they were thrilled to hear about Jackson's downfall. Harry asked me how much money I had sued Jackson for. I told him it was in the range of $2 to $3 billion. His eyes widened over the phone. "Dad, that's insane. Do you really think you'll get that much?" I smiled, even though he couldn't see me. "We'll see. The lawsuit is about more than the money. It's about making sure he pays for what he's done. If I can get a fraction of it, I'll consider it a win, but I want to make sure Jackson's life is as ruined as the lives of the women he's destroyed." Harry was quiet for a moment before responding, "I'm proud of you, Dad." "Thanks, son. I'm just doing what needs to be done." After we hung up, I went back to the living room where Ellen and Annabelle were sitting, sipping tea. Ellen looked at me with a raised eyebrow. "How'd the kids take the news?" "They're on board with everything," I said, sitting down beside her. "They're happy to hear about the lawsuit, and they know Karen's situation is complicated. We'll take it one step at a time." Ellen nodded, then looked over at Annabelle. "How are you feeling about all of this, sweetheart?" Annabelle sighed, setting her tea down on the coffee table. "I'm angry, honestly. I don't know if I'll ever forgive Mom. But at the same time, I feel sorry for her. I hate what she's done, but I can't help but feel like Jackson brainwashed her. She was never this person before." I leaned forward, placing my hand on hers. "You're allowed to feel conflicted, Annabelle. This whole situation is a mess, but remember, no matter what happens, we're all here for each other." Annabelle smiled softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thanks, Dad. I just wish this wasn't our reality." "I know," I said quietly, "but we'll get through it together." The following Monday, I received an urgent call from my legal team. Jackson had gotten wind of the lawsuit and was scrambling to protect his assets. He'd hired an army of lawyers to fight the case, but from what my team had gathered, his reputation was already taking a hit. Several high-profile investors were pulling out of his ventures, and the media was beginning to circulate stories about his depraved behavior. It was only a matter of time before his entire empire crumbled. Later that week, I got a call from Jackson himself. I wasn't surprised he had my number after all. We had worked together for years before this. I answered calmly, curious about what he had to say. Well, Jim, Jackson began, his voice smooth but with a hint of desperation, it seems you've got me in a bit of a pickle. I've got to say, I didn't think you had the guts to come after me like this. I remained silent, letting him talk. I mean, really, Jim, he continued, you're going to ruin me over what? Your wife? She's the one who came to me. I didn't force her to do anything. That hit a nerve, but I kept my composure. Jackson, this isn't just about Karen. This is about every woman you've manipulated, every life you've destroyed, and every arrogant, sickening act you've gotten away with. You may think you're untouchable, but I'm going to make sure you're held accountable for all of it. Jackson chuckled, but I could hear the edge in his voice. You think you're some kind of hero, huh? Let me tell you something, Jim, this lawsuit won't stick. I've got the best lawyers in the country. I'll drag this out for years, and by the time we're done, you'll wish you never messed with me. I smirked, though he couldn't see it. I'm prepared to fight for as long as it takes, Jackson. And while you're busy trying to save your fortune, I'll be busy exposing every dirty secret you've ever tried to hide. By the time this is over, you'll be lucky if you're left with a penny to your name. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then Jackson's voice dropped. You're making a mistake, Jim. You don't want me as an enemy. I leaned back in my chair. You already are, Jackson. And trust me, you're the one who's made the mistake. Without waiting for a response, I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of satisfaction wash over me. The lawsuit dragged on for months, but the damage to Jackson's reputation was swift. The media began reporting on his exploits with Sally Murphy, Alice Brown, and eventually Karen. But former associates came forward, sharing stories of his abusive behavior, and several of his business deals fell apart. Investors withdrew, and his empire started to collapse. Meanwhile, Karen was struggling. She continued to live at the motel, working through her treatment for the STDs she had contracted. I made sure she had enough money to survive, but I didn't offer anything more. She occasionally called to check on the kids, but the conversations were brief and strained. The kids visited her a few times, but their relationship was clearly damaged. They couldn't look at her the same way. One day, a few months later, Annabelle came to me with tears in her eyes. Dad, she said quietly, I think Mom's finally hit rock bottom. She called me crying today, saying she doesn't know what to do. I sat down beside her, taking her hand. What do you think she wants? Annabelle wiped her eyes. I think she wants to come home. She said Jackson's cut her off and she has nowhere to go. I took a deep breath, considering the situation. I'm not going to take her back, Annabelle. She made her choices. But if she's really in trouble, we can find a way to help her without bringing her back into this house. Annabelle nodded, understanding. I don't want her back here either, Dad. I can't help but feel sorry for her. We'll figure something out, I assured her, but you don't have to carry this burden alone. We'll handle it as a family. So the following week, I helped Karen find a small apartment, far away from Jackson and the mess she had created. I paid the first few months' rent and made sure she had enough money to live on while she got back on her feet. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give her a fresh start. As for Jackson, the lawsuit continued to unravel his life. His assets were frozen, and the court ruled in my favor, awarding me damages in the hundreds of millions. It wasn't the full amount I had sued for, but it was enough to destroy him financially. His empire crumbled, and his name became synonymous with disgrace. In the end, justice was served. Karen remained a distant part of our lives, but the family grew closer through the ordeal. We had been tested in the worst possible way, but we had come out stronger, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace,